When I saw Marvel announce a TVMA Marvel Zombies based on the What If episode, I was so excited because whenever Marvel decide to dip their toes into anything R-rated, it usually comes out pretty good. So when this was announced, I was ecstatic. Like I said, I was excited. I was ready for peak. 10 minutes in, let's say, I was like, this is pretty good. The animation, while the style's not my favorite, it's carried over from What If, so I can't have too many complaints. And it wasn't, yeah, like I said, the animation wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. You can't complain. Um, and the characters, it was interesting to see a combination of characters that you wouldn't see in live action. Um, and then when, okay, spoiler alert, uh, three, two, one. When Kate Bishop gets absolutely fucking atomized, I was locked in because I wasn't expecting that. Even though this is a TVMA show, I wasn't expecting to just see someone get turned into ash within the first like 20 minutes of the show. So yeah, like I said, it was interesting. It was cool to just have someone be lobotomized in a few seconds by a zombie Captain Marvel no less, which is also pretty cool. Then like I said, Blade shows up. It's on the up. The show had me intrigued. I was hooked. They show up at the Shield base with Yelena and uh David Hasselhoff, no, David Harbour. Uh, yeah, I'm just gonna call him David Harbour. Um, I was still locked in. I was like, okay, this is cool. Introducing more characters that we're familiar with. Then Zombie Okoye, that's her name, right? She shows up with a cut in half zombie Captain America, which again, these are cool ideas. Seeing zombie versions of these characters is always cool. I do wish they kind of went a little bit deeper with the characters they were picking out. Like it's all characters we're familiar with in live action, which is fine. Like I understand that. And I think picking Yelena and David Harbour's characters is to get us even more attached to them in live action, who are obviously going to have major roles in the upcoming live action movies. However, in this episode, my arguably main issue with the show appeared. Well, this show has a lot of issues, but this is one of the main ones, which is the humor. This show tries very hard to be funny sometimes, and it has quite a lot of jokes, I say in quotation marks, that it's telling, um, that just feel completely out of place. Like blending comedy and horror, I would say, um, is is not uncommon. Lots of things have done that, and lots of things have done that very well. My favorite being the movie Shaun of the Dead, which blends comedy and its horror and emotional aspects so well. Um, but in this show, it's uh, it's not great. The comedy feels like it's written for children, which in a show that is marketed as being R-rated just feels very out of place. And I'm not just saying it's comedy for children because it doesn't have curse words or swears or inappropriate things or like sexual references. Comedy doesn't need that to be funny, but it's just the quality of the jokes are so bottom of the barrel. I remember visibly sighing and rolling my eyes whenever some of the jokes were told because they just don't land, and I don't think they're funny. And it's nothing to do with like the performances, the way they read their lines. Like all the voice performances are pretty good all around. I don't think you can have any complaints with that. But yeah, the humor was a big negative on this series. Um, okay, moving on to the actual episode 2, which I now remember as introducing Shang-Chi. The animation. As I said previously, I'm not a huge fan of the style, the kind of like awkward, soft, smooth edges, but also kind of clanky. I don't even know how to describe it. But I'm not a fan. And that is even more apparent in the start of the second episode. For some reason, just the start of the second episode introducing Shang-Chi, I noticed the animation get even more noticeably shit. Like it was really bad at some places, really bad. And the season, well, I say the season, the first episode was pretty consistent with the animation. Like the section with Blade, I would say, is actually quite well animated. That little action scene he has with Zombie Ghost, I was that was really well animated. And then the start of this episode is horrific. I don't know what happened, but it's just the start of this episode, this like mini chase in the city with these people getting huge from pim particles. The animation in this whole start just is really bad. And I don't know if it's like a budget reason where they had to be like, okay, we have to save some of the budget for the later scenes. So we have to kind of cut down on this part because it's not as important as what's coming later. But it just looked really bad. And yeah, I was not, my eyeballs were not pleased. Then we get to episode 3 where the two groups kind of convene. Um, and they do these emotional moments for some of the characters when they die, like when Yelena, again in quotation marks, sacrifices herself. Um, they try and make it sad, and the vocal performances are very good. Like they sell it, but you just you you can't get emotional because the you haven't been with these characters for longer than 40 minutes. You just, even though they're characters that you know, and if you, I've watched Thunderbolts and both um, the Red Guardian and Yelena, I love their characters in live action and I love their actors, but you can't get emotional. And it's always trying to balance this humor and emotion, but the characters are so poorly written in this that it's just, I feel like the writers have been like, okay, you know these characters, so you're going to instantly care about them, so we don't need to do anything to make you care about them in this show because you already know them, which just doesn't work. Because even though they are the same character, I see them as completely different. Like to me, when we meet them, they are blank slates. Even though I know of them, I'm not expecting anything. I'm not attached to them. So when they do this emotional moment with the really well done voice performances, it erupts nothing from me. I don't feel sad. I don't feel anything, to be honest. And then the humor just weighs it down even more. Where if there was any chance I could get emotional over it, that is gone out the window because of the humor. Then they finally get the MacGuffin to the place after a whole thing with Zombie Namor. Um, they get it to New Asgard and they meet Valkyrie, and we meet the main villain of the series, which is, drumroll please, Wanda again. Yay. It's such a shame what they've done to her character. Like, she was so cool in Age of Ultron. She was so cool in Infinity War and Endgame, and then Multiverse of Madness. And they, she just, she's not a well-written villain. She doesn't suit being a villain. Um, and yeah, her whole arc in this show is not interesting, not compelling. She doesn't work as a villain whatsoever, and again, I rolled my eyes when she very obviously came out as the villain. Yeah, I feel there were many ways you could have taken this story, and this was not the way to do it. We also get to see Thor again after a scuffle he had with Zombie Thanos, where he got whooped. Um, there was a nice tribute to Chadwick Boseman, T'Challa, in the scene with Zombie Thanos, which was cool. Um, but again, that scene kind of sucked. Apart from the bit with T'Challa, just Thor, Rocket, um, which again, my favorite part in the show is just characters getting absolutely incinerated down to the bone. And that happens genuinely about 5 times. And it is the best part of the show. That is what I think got the laughs out of me. Whenever I just saw a character get fucking shredded to the bone, that was entertaining, I'm not gonna lie. The story again, which I'm not going to pretend I understand, something Infinity Hulk can stop them, and then Army, and they fight scene, everyone dies. Spider-Man shows up, and headless Ant-Man in strange cape, and Minotaur character, and it becomes a real mess by the end. And I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't. It, it didn't make sense to me what was happening, and the ending still doesn't make sense to me. How you can have all these strong characters and they just it's a mess. It's a mess. It's making my dialogue right now a mess because a dialogue like I'm a fucking NPC. My thoughts, it's scuffling my brain because it's really bad. It's really bad. I'm not a fan of this show, and my excitement for it was off the chain, so I'm incredibly disappointed by this. And it just feels like a mess. I feel like if the writing was stronger and they had a little bit more budget for the animation to put more into it. But yeah, this show was not what I hoped it would be, which is a shame because I had such high hopes. But yeah, my brain is moving at 3,000 miles per hour, trying to regain my thoughts on this. When you have a messy show and you put that into my messy brain, this is what comes out. So yeah, um, I hope this doesn't dissuade Marvel from making more R-rated stuff. And I've seen the reception to it pretty good, which is surprising to me. Um, I really I was so ready to love it, and I couldn't. Apart from a few moments, it just wasn't for me. And if anyone disagrees and thinks um that they really love this show and that it's a masterpiece and that the animation's incredible, please let me know. I want you to disagree with me. I want to see different points of view, see if you can change my mind on a few things. But yeah, um, that's my review of Marvel Zombies.